And now it's my pleasure to welcome a globally recognized cybersecurity leader, someone who's been named among the top 20 women in cybersecurity in the world and continues to shape how organizations think about secure technology adoption. Please join me in welcoming Heba Farahat, who will be speaking on a pause before agentic AI adoption.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So today we are going to talk about a different topic. We are going to talk about agentic AI. So we are always pushed to buy more. And technology and cybersecurity, it's not an exception. So today we'll be navigating what's agentic AI, so we'll get introduced to the technology, and then know if it's suitable to our problems that we are trying to solve. Is it bringing good to our business? Or maybe we are introducing a new backdoor to our environment. And then we are going to know, beyond the hype, what should we do to consider a secure adoption for this technology? What the key considerations that should be considering? What the questions that we need to answer before we decide that we want to ensure the adoption of agentic AI? So our talk will be a pause before the adoption of agentic AI. So AI has been around for decades. Why the silent noise about AI? So the noise has started years ago when the Gen AI has started. This is because of its abilities that we all had witnessed throughout the past years, because it was generating content and doing so many things. But one of the most things that make it appealing to organizations is that its ability to solve the data problem. So organizations has many types of data. Some of them are structured, and the majority is unstructured data, which represent over or around 80% of the organization data. What does unstructured data represent? Actually, it represents any data that we cannot put it into a static form of rows and columns and organized. Yet, it's a very rich source of information that can definitely empower the decision-making process for the organizations. And Gen AI, and specifically LLMs, it has a specific capabilities to process these random, unstructured data and give us structured pattern so that it can empower business leaders and give them more insights about their business. And actually, some resources has highlighted it as the hidden, like golden mine of information. Before we proceed, let us highlight, okay, so we talked about Gen AI and LLMs, and actually we just talked about the traditional LLMs. How is that different than agentic AI that everyone is talking about nowadays? So the LLMs that we have been talking about, it's mostly reactive. You give it an input, it gives you an output, so it doesn't do anything from its own. It is just reactive, so a little bit it's some sort of a basic. Yet, it's very good in reasoning, which makes it the core, like the brain of the agentic AI, which takes LLMs to a whole new level. When we talk about agentic AI, we talk about, just like the CEO was just saying, autonomy, agency. So you give it a goal that you want to achieve, and it breaks down the goal into smaller ones. And given the agency nature of the agentic AI, it decides what needs to be done. So it observes, it notices, and it reasons about what it wants to achieve. It self-adapts, which makes it very appealing to businesses, and many people want to adopt it. But however, as we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. It's powerful, it can do more, but however, that can go along with so many risks, just like we are going to discuss in our presentation today. So beyond the hype of the adoption, Is it a good thing to adopt agentic AI or not? Actually, according to statistics made by Gartner, is that 40% of the projects that are adopting agentic AI is going to be canceled by next years. Why is this happening? Agentic AI is actually good, and what if we can just secure it? What is the problem then? Actually, there are multiples. So one thing is the escalating cost of the adoption. The other thing is the lack of business value, and the risk control issues, and the legacy system accountability. So sometimes we are trying to bring a technology to a system that is legacy, so this just cannot happen. And actually, there's another interesting quote that came along, and I wanted to share it with you. It's by Henry Ford. Is that so many people are so busy trying to find better ways of doing things they shouldn't have done already in the first place. So we don't want to adopt something because it's trending. Instead, we want to make sure that it solves a real problem for our business. So when should we adopt agentic AI and when we shouldn't? If it's a right choice to our business or not. So let's talk about key considerations prior to adopting agentic AI. So at first, let's talk about guiding principles. Let's start simple. So you have a problem. What is the simplest solution and the smartest to your problem? This is the first question. And then add complexity just when it's needed, not just add it because it is a hype and everyone is talking about it. And also avoid over-engineering. Sometimes people, it's actually a very simple thing, so we cannot make a very huge investment and bring a very advanced technology and very expensive to do something that is very simple, just because everyone is doing it. This is actually not good at all. So let's avoid over-engineering. Sometimes you just need a script or automation or rule-based flow. That's going to be enough, but we don't need a very advanced technology to do it. The other thing, and actually it is very important, is the cost and the return of investment. So sometimes when we do over-engineering, we are introducing unnecessary cost. So we need to evaluate the ROI, the return on investment, early before we adopt. Does the value that is bringing to our business make sense to the cost and the time and the effort we are going to invest? This is a very important question. Because no one of us want to be like Gartner predicts that 40% of the projects is going to be canceled by next year. So if we are going to make a quick guide for decision, let's make it in 4 simple steps. The first one, not automate a process that should be redesigned in the first place. The second thing, if the task is repeatable and predictable, maybe we can start by a script or a simple automation. Okay, if the task needs simple assistance, now we are going one step up. So we need to retrieve, summarize, and classify. Maybe we can use an AI agent. But now let's go to a whole new level. If we want multiple step reasoning, planning, actions, then now we can consider using agentic AI. So the AI adoption race. Organizations are running around trying to adopt the latest technology because they want to have a competitive edge, which is actually a very good thing. But we need to have some considerations in place. That attackers are also there, so they are aware of what each of us are thinking of. So AI is emerging as a high-value target. We are seeing 13% of organizations that are experiencing breaches involve their AI models and applications. And 90%, or over 90% of these organizations, actually, the reason behind these breaches was a lack of something that is very simple and everyone is talking about for a very long time. It's not new at all. It's a lack of proper controls. So, which is actually give us an insight that people are not, or actually organizations, are not considering security. It's coming an afterthought process after the adoption. Yet, it's responsible for a big percent of the cybersecurity breaches. The other thing is that also organizations are pushing their employees to be more productive, adapt AI, adapt AI, adapt AI. But this also pushes the employees to get their own tools of AI. And here we are having a shadow AI. What is this shadow AI? It's unapproved tools that used in your organization, yet you know nothing about it. So it does not protect it. Maybe employees are unintentionally leaking data to these AI tools. And by the way, it can lead to losing your competitive edge and leak data, and you all know the cybersecurity risks. And actually, shadow AI is responsible for 20% of all breaches, and the breaches that is caused due to the usage of shadow AI is much more than caused by the use of approved AI tools. Okay, now let's talk about how agentic AI is reshaping the threat landscape. So there are always been security assessments and cybersecurity threats. It has been there for decades. But with AI, and specifically agentic AI, the game has changed. Because they are giving, or they are introducing unique threats and vulnerabilities that wasn't there before. And this has given their great power of the autonomy, of the planning, of the reasoning, all these great things. While it's awesome and solves a lot of business problems, but also it introduced a lot of threats and vulnerabilities that wasn't there before. And actually, traditional security assessments cannot capture these threats and vulnerabilities in their original form. I can give you an example about this. Just let me go back. So first, when we are doing, when we're adopting a system, sometimes we do a threat modeling to see what threats are there. So there were frameworks that have been used for decades, and they were actually very well known, like Stride, for example. But now, if we are doing it for AI and agentic AI specific, it actually cannot capture all the threats that have been there. For that, there was an extension for the framework, another that's called Maestro, that captures the unique vulnerabilities and threats that introduced by the AI. So even the security assessment that we have been doing, if it's not taking into consideration the unique threats and vulnerabilities introduced by the new technology, then they are not enough anymore. They are giving us gaps themselves. So this is very important. So what can go wrong in agentic AI systems? So let's talk about the most impactful threats facing autonomous agentic AI system. And they are impactful from my point of view. They are not specifically mentioned as impactful in well-known resource. I choose some of the impactful threats, and I want to discuss with you today. Okay, so we are going to discuss some threats from the OWASP threat guide. So the first one is the memory poisoning. What if an attacker can inject false information in the database of the agentic AI, which is definitely going to alter the decision-making process after that? This is the first threat, the memory poisoning. The other one is tool misuse. So as we all know, agentic AI, it integrates with several tools to extend its capabilities. What if an attacker can make agentic AI or agent hijacking, where they misuse the tools? The other threat is cascading hallucination. So are we all aware what is hallucination? Can you give me I don't want to explain something that you all know, so let me ask first. Okay, the majority didn't raise their hand, so allow me to quickly say what is hallucination is. Okay, I'm sure everyone knows it, but maybe we just don't know the term. How many times we ask ChatGPT a question, and the answer looks perfect. However, it's not correct. How many times? It just happens all the time. They give us an answer that looks perfect, plausible, but he made it up for you. So exactly this is what we're going to talk about. But with agentic, it's cascading hallucinations, because sometimes there are multiple agents, and the systems are much more big. So the hallucination can cascade from one system to another, so the impact is even higher. And the other thing is the intent breaking and goal manipulation. So we said that the agentic AI, you can give it a goal, and then it's going to break it down into smaller goals and reach it. What if an attacker can manipulate these goals and then use the agent to do whatever he wants to do? And then repudiation and untraceability. This occurs when the agents can perform actions, but they cannot be tracked. And this is due to insufficient logging and monitoring. And the other thing is identity spoofing and impersonation, where the attackers exploit the authentication mechanism to impersonate AI agents or human attackers to enable them to do unauthorized actions. Agent communication poisoning. So we are having agents communicating with each other. What if an attacker can manipulate these messages between the agents and add injection attacks or maybe spread false messages? Rogue agents in multiple agent systems. So again, we are having multiple agents that are communicating with each other. What if an attacker can add a rogue agent in this system and can be part of other agents? Okay, so now we have talked about the threats, what can go wrong. Okay, let's talk about other side. We always want to perceive security as an enabler to the business. So it's very important for organizations to always look for innovation, for always look for adoption for new technologies, and this is actually very important. We just need to make sure that there are some considerations in place, and this is what we have been talking about. So now in this section, let's talk about how organizations can balance innovation with security. So let's talk about some key considerations in different areas. So the first area that we are going to talk about is secure agentic AI adoption. So at first, let's talk about security by design. So we want to proactively involve security in the life cycle of agentic systems, from the first stage, design and requirements, moving forward to when it just ends, the decommissioning phase. And also it's very important that we maintain AI asset inventory. We know what type of AI do we have in our system and the components of our system, the AI SBOM. And this is actually going to be very crucial if we want to fight supply chain attacks, which is actually has a higher percentage of the attacks that is targeting AI systems. So again, let's start simple. Let's start with the other thing is start with system understanding. So when we have a clear understanding of what our agentic system is intended to do, its operational environment and the data it will be handled, and the AI, that give us a good understanding of what is our system, what it's trying to do, and then that takes us to the next level, which is to map the service, the attack service via
threat modeling. So just like we were talking about threat modeling a while ago, sorry, I was just adjusting the mic.
Is the voice good? Okay, let's continue. Okay, so just we're talking about the threat modeling like from a couple of slides, but now let's talk about it from a different perspective. So when we map the attack service for threat modeling, we identify the threats across different layers: the application, API integration, and the AI machine learning.
And we use the threat model output as an input to the secure architecture and the control section, which is we are going to talk about in the next slide.
To secure design architecture, there are some controls that we need to make sure they are there. So the worst thing about conferences is the mic, so 1 second, please. Is that good? Good? Okay, let's continue. So the secure design architecture, the first thing is the least privilege access. So we need to restrict the access that the agent is getting so that it's only access what is necessary. We don't want to give it excessive permission. This is the first thing. The other thing is the zero trust between the agents. We should assume that all agents or models and tools are compromised. So we need to zero trust, never trust, always verify, as we all have heard before. So we need to authenticate and authorize inter-agent communication. The third thing is isolation and Contamination. We should isolate agents in a controlled, secured environment. And then defense in depth. So as you all see, the cybersecurity principles that we all know for decades still applies to the AI system. So we need to utilize layered security to prevent the feature at one level from compromising the other level. And here I'm referencing some leading frameworks and guidelines that shaping the future of the agentic AI. You definitely need to check them out before adopting agentic AI in your organization. And now, let's talk about essential agentic AI controls and best practices. The first one is very simple, agentic authentication and authorization. So every AI agent must have its own identity, just like humans. So we need to have strong cryptographic credentials combined with role-based access. The other thing, runtime monitoring and anomaly detection. So agents operate continuously, their behavior need to be observed. And actually, anomaly detection is very, very important. So let me explain it simple. What happens is, we monitor everyday interactions. And whenever we are seeing deviation from this interaction, that this is an indication there is something wrong is happening. And this is basically what anomaly detection is. So when we talk about AI systems and AI attacks and everything, while the detection is becoming more challenging because the attackers are far more beyond than the defenders, and this happens every day, anomaly detection is one of the techniques that always make things better. And sometimes it catches many attacks, even if they are new. So this is very important, anomaly detection. And again, audit auditing and forensics, because definitely we cannot secure what we cannot trace. The other thing is the tool access controls and sandboxing. Again, least privilege for every tool that the agent can invoke. And the memory integrity protection, because just like we were saying, we can have memory poisoning, so we need to make sure that this is not happening. So memory integrity protection is very important. Agent behavior constraints and guardrails, because as we were mentioning in the threats, attackers can force the agent to do unauthorized actions or deviate from its goals. So it's very important that we have agent behavior constraints and guardrails. So we define strict boundaries for agent actions, which reduces the risk of unintended autonomy. And then we have agent-to-agent communication. So when multiple agents collaborate, the communication becomes their new attack surface. So again, we need to enforce encryption, authentication, and message validation to ensure that one compromised agent cannot spread malicious information across the network. And input validation, sanitization, output filtering, and verification. Again, you see the basic security controls that have been there for decades still applies to agentic AI systems. Okay, let's have some positive look about the agentic AI market worldwide and in the UAE. So worldwide, as we see, the revenue. Okay, so this slide talks about the revenue that is being generated from the agentic AI worldwide and what are the expectations for the future as well. So as you see, it's very positive. This is worldwide and also in the UAE. So the curve is increasing. So these are positive insights, but we need to make sure that we have the correct considerations before we adopting in our business. And after having that, after we ensure that we are solving a real problem, we also need that we are making it in a secure way so that we don't introduce backdoors and more attack services in our environment. So that was my presentation for today. Feel free to connect if you have any question, and I hope you have enjoyed it and find it informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Heba, for that timely and grounded perspective, reminding us why pausing and thinking deeply is just as important as moving fast with agentic AI. So now we have a quick break. It's right outside the hall, so you can grab your coffee, take some time, refresh yourself, and then come back to the same hall for the sessions next. Thank you.